Shivani, over to you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in for this very special conversation brought to you by NHRDN, which is the National Human Resources Development Network, in the run-up to the 26th National NHRDN conference that we have in April this year, happening on 5th and 6th of April in Kolkata. The theme of this year's conference is Beyond Tomorrow. It's an invitation for the HR community to come together and think about how we may co-create sustainable organizations that are equipped to look beyond the immediate tomorrow. I'm Shivani. I am a member of the NHRDN Young Talent Council and your host for the session today. Today, we are in conversation with two esteemed HR leaders about what thinking beyond tomorrow entails for all of us. We have Mr. S.V. Nathan, partner Deloitte India, and we also have Mr. Ranjan Banerjee, Group Head Human Resources at Berger Paints India. We are just waiting for Mr. Ranjan also to join in shortly for this session. But we are very pleased to have you, Nathan, amongst us to make time on a Saturday for this conversation. Before we get started, we also just want to call out a very interesting contest that's happening today. Two lucky winners today can win free passes to the NHRDN National Conference happening in Kolkata. So before we get started, I just want to tell you how you can go about it, how the lucky winners can win their passes. One, the most insightful or thought-provoking question to the panelists today will win one free pass. Now, all you have to do is that very soon there will be a QR code that will be displayed on the screen. So take time till 11:20 a.m. today and post the questions you want to ask the panelists. Once we finish the conversation with the panelists and when we open up for the Q&A, the most insightful, thought-provoking question that gets asked, that's come from the audience, will win one free pass to the National NHRDN conference. That's one. And the second is, later in the session, you will also see a QR code with a hashtag for this session. So all you have to do is listen in closely for the session, take screenshots if you want to, make notes if that helps, and put a really creative post about this session on your LinkedIn profile with the hashtag that will get displayed on the screen. And we'll look through the best, most creative posts. And the person who's posted this post will also be winning the second free pass for the National NHRDN conference. So what we are saying is pay close attention, listen in, and make the most of this so that then you can also join us at Kolkata for the conference. Great. So we also have Ranjan who's joined us now. Hi, Ranjan. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to have you with us this Saturday. We'll, I
Same
think,
here.
we'll dive in straight into the conversation. We all are very excited about the conference, and the theme is also very thought-provoking this year. It is Beyond Tomorrow. So, Ranjan, my first question is to you. Help us understand why this theme has been chosen, and why is it important to think about this question of thinking beyond tomorrow right now at this point?
Right, good question. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. The last conference at Hyderabad had Decoding the Future as a theme. And we are saying, let's unlock the future and go beyond tomorrow. And why beyond tomorrow? It serves as a call to action. I will inspire the HR fraternity and the business fraternity to embrace change, navigate complexities, harness innovation, and chart out a more resilient course beyond tomorrow, because that's coming fast and soon. It's not about the dates or the years, it's about the change that is going to impact us. And I think we've got to be, as a people function, which is playing a pivotal role in any organization. The call to action is now. Let's do it now. Let's look for what's happening beyond tomorrow, and let's decide and strategize and give our key action points, saying, okay, this is what is coming beyond tomorrow, and this is how we're going to deal with these issues. That's a call to action and a response from the HR fraternity to what the business is asking for.
I think thank you so much for sharing that. It's definitely a strong theme to galvanize the HR community around. Seems very timely. Nathan, my next question is to you. You know, thinking beyond, thinking long term, thinking about sustainability and not being focused on the very immediate incentives is also something that we draw from this theme of Beyond Tomorrow, right? So, what we want to take your help to decode is that we are all fairly aware that organizations and leaders within organizations have very strong incentives to think in the short term, like their quarter to quarter results. You have shareholders, you have the board, so we all understand that. But what are some of the incentives for the organizations and leaders to start thinking of long-term gains and sustainability? And are there any new incentives that you see them becoming mindful of?
First of all, I want to thank all of you for inviting me for this wonderful pre-conference webinar that we have. Very pleased to see Ranjan and others. Shivani, you are a wonderful host. Thank you for taking time to lead us through this wonderful topic. Pretty much like Ranjan mentioned, one of the basic questions which is on our mind when you look at sustainability is, do we leave behind a beautiful legacy for our descendants, or do we riddle them with unconquerable debt? And as is my want, I'm a little bit of a storyteller, so please humor me here. Once there was a young boy, and this young boy was playing on the banks of a river, and he looked up at his grandfather and said, "Grandpa, why are there no birds around this place?" So the grandfather says, "There are no birds because there are no trees." Okay, why are there no trees? There are no trees because every time there's a woodcutter coming by, he chops down a tree and he takes it away, because of which, again, the river then inundates the banks, and then we have to keep moving. Son, it's too complicated. The short answer is, it's because we don't have trees, we don't have birds. And you don't have birds, then you don't hear all these wonderful chirps in the morning. And so, son, this is the short answer. The next day, the grandfather got up, and as is his wont, wants to make sure that his son goes to school, and he finds the boy missing. And they search high and low for the young boy, and they find him in the far corner, and he's got 2 or 3 saplings in his hand, and with a little bit of an instrument, not much like a spade, but with his tiny hands, he was digging into the soil, and he was planting one of the saplings, and then with his tender hands, he was putting a little bit of the soil back. And he did this for a couple of plants, and his grandfather said, "What are you doing?" Says, "Grandpa, I'm planting a tree. I'm planting a tree." And the moment he said that, the grandfather said, "Hey, that is a noble thing, but you still have school, don't you?" Says, "Yes, Grandpa, let me just finish a few of these." And nobody knows what happened that day. The following day, the same routine happened. Boy was missing, grandfather goes, looking for him, and then finds him again, and all he's doing is, with his tender hands, he was planting saplings. The boy did this for 25 long years, non-stop. 25 long years he did this. And in place of what used to be an arid, barren land, is now several thousand hectares of great forest. Now, this boy is a much celebrated man. He's also called the forest man, Padma Shri Payang Yadav. And Payang Yadav is a person to me who symbolizes what sustainability is about. Organizations need to be looking at, well, there are several ways to look at what organization ought to be doing. I think that at the very least, when they start to look at their policies, when they start to look at anything that they start off with, for example, is there a time-based strategy where they are looking at, okay, for this particular time, do you remember in the COVID times, there was a time-based strategy. That worked very well. Then there is a whole host of the kind of information that we have. So there is an information-based strategy. Do we have money? Do we have enough thing that we can sustain for a longer period of time? So that's a finance-based or a money-based strategy. And then, of course, there are several strategies. So each one of these strategies must be things that you might be able to put all this together. And if we didn't do this now, sooner rather than later, we will be staring the end of a barrel of a gun, which is going to blow up in our face. Organizations, they don't last more than 18 years. 17 or 18 years is what normal organizations last. So if you find any organization more than 18 years, which means embedded in their DNA is something around sustainability. So to all organizations, there are two primary intentions. One, survive. Second, grow. The third one, if I can add, sustain. So if you're able to stitch all of this, then I think you would have an organization which looks at not the current, but something which is in the long run. And I can explain a little bit of that, but this is just the opening statement. Thank you.
I think really appreciate you putting it in perspective. I think the story helps us visualize that it's your own sustenance first. And yeah, I think it's a very important point that you called out, that if an organization has lived long enough, then perhaps sustainability is in its genome almost. Thank you so much for that. Ranjan, now moving on to you, taking from here, you helped establish why it's a call to action, why Beyond Tomorrow is a call to action. Help us understand from what you see in your experience, in your interactions, how are organizations thinking of sustainability today? And how have you seen this conversation change from, let's say, a few years back, let's say even pre-COVID? And while they're thinking of sustainability, while organizations would be across different sectors, what are some of the common themes you see, becoming more important as organizations think of sustainability today?
Right. Thank you, Nathan, for this wonderful perspective. And so you see, there have been always organizations which have stood out, irrespective of whether there was COVID or there wasn't COVID. And they always stand out. So that's there. But post-COVID, and there's a phase where people said, okay, there's a reporting requirement on sustainability, and therefore that was driving some amount of focus, and that was just reporting. The second is there is an understanding and an appreciation in organizations today that with the consumer demographics changing rapidly, consumers and employees are going to be increasingly critical of organizations which are not working on looking at a long-term sustainable future and looking at what the planet is providing us and how do we help the planet sustain the future. So that's one part of it. The second is organizations are increasingly realizing that even from a business perspective, it makes sense. So environmental stewardship, social responsibility, governance and ethical governance, and resulting in resilient business models for the future. I think that has a very clear linkage now, and I see a lot of CEOs across waking up to this and saying, yes, it's time, we have to do this, and there are certain must-dos and there are certain must-never-do, which is coming into place today. And organizations, from their conversations, I can realize across the board that sustainability has shifted from just being a peripheral reporting concern to a more strategic initiative, a more strategic imperative, because that is going to impact how consumers and your would-be employees are going to look at you. How are they going to perceive you, and what are they going to say about you? So you also have a much more active, hyperactive civil society, and therefore organizations will have to respond to this. But more than external events and pressures forcing organizations to wake up, I think there is a realization within organizations themselves and within CEOs and boards saying, yes, it's a strategic focus, it's a strategic imperative, and it is important for my organization's long-term viability. And as an organization, I owe it to the planet and to the world around to be more concerned and focused on ESG, if I may put it that way. So that's my 2 bits about it.
Thank you for sharing your perspective and drawing attention to the fact, like you said, that it's moved beyond peripheral reporting to a strategic objective, because the context in which the organizations now exist demands them to think more strategically about sustainability. I think that's a very important shift. What I find very interesting is that, within the theme of the 26th NHRDN National Conference, as it's been architected to say the theme is Beyond Tomorrow, there's also been thought beyond that to say that what this Beyond Tomorrow could be in terms of. So there are sub-themes around beyond numbers, beyond boundaries, beyond generations, beyond cubicles, beyond titles, and finally beyond 9 to 5. So Nathan, my next question in regard to this sub-themes is with you, and I want to focus specifically on beyond numbers, right? About the theme being focused on around the alliance between people, data, and tech in a bid to build and think beyond tomorrow. So I want to focus in on your experience at Deloitte. Help us understand how data and tech is being leveraged to create superior employee experience that is, of course, satisfying to the colleagues, delights the colleagues, but also is sustainable in the long run. How is this journey being made in Deloitte in your view?
So let me just back up a little bit, and I'll share something which talks about any sustainable practice. All of us are friends. I had a friend of mine in my growing up years, and he worked in one of the very marquee IT companies. And he used to go up and make a proposal. I think we should be doing this for our employees. And it used to be a very simple thing, like I think, we should subsidize something in the cafeteria or something which he believes would bring some benefit to employees. And he had a very celebrated man who was his boss. And he used to say, okay, this sounds very, very nice, but can you write out a proposal which looks at the way this will be implemented 5 years hence? So 5 years hence, take a look at what happens to the finances, what happens to people who are around, what benefit would people have, what will be the changing milieu of the people that we have. By the way, this is just not in India, but right across the world, because you should not be looking at just what's happening in the cafeteria backyard. So my friend used to really get into paroxysms of anxiety as to how he's going to present. In those days, when we used to talk about and share what we were doing, as much as he got some answers, it left me thinking a lot about what we should be doing in organizations. Take technology, for example. So when we started, good old days, and Ranjan knows this very well, we used to have files, we used to have computerization was a big thing in our days, but the file still exists because it's important. I mean, what if somebody asks for those files? Then the whole thing became digital. There was a whole process of digitalization. Makes life far more easy. Today, there is a pre-boarding. And I remember having long conversations with our global chief technology officer and saying, what should be our organization 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What should be the experience of an employee? The experience of an employee today, if you look at the very simple yardstick one should, I'm just going to leave Deloitte aside for the moment, but the way we look at it is, if I go out into the market and if I am able to get many things done, and the payment is done through a very, very simple device, and everybody is very happy because it happens in an instant. There is no money movement. You don't have to worry about change that you're getting back, not getting back. The whole experience is seamless. It leaves everybody happy. The vendor is happy, you're happy, thing moves on. Now that is the highest end of the digital world, which people are experiencing on a daily basis, almost like it's if you didn't have it, you'll start to wonder why this is not around. Take it back in an organization context. When somebody joins, we get people into a room, and do we get them to fill forms? Not anymore. They're very simple things. When people come into an organization, what is the joining experience that one has? And by the way, gone are the days where you will have those people connect which says, I'm going to call every employee, I'm going to speak to, which is all very nice to have. Is this sustainable? And by the way, do people see it and respect it? Is this something that is important to us? We started doing a whole range of the digital HR, and we also came to realize that there are some sentient processes which are equally important. For instance, we all do our FGDs, and we try to collect information and try to find out what we still will have those experiences. Our 60 questions that we had to check out employee satisfaction is out of the window. Today, we just have 10 questions. And that's an annual affair where you should be able to fill those out in less than 30 seconds. But more importantly, what is the sentient process on a day-to-day basis? So Shivani, we have something which is like a small pop-up. And if a few of us have been to, let's say, the Changi Airport in Singapore, and as you exit, you will have those smileys, VPs, and neutral, and you just press one of them, and people will get to know. And by the way, there's a lot of information that is collected there. So we do this very simple one. It's called the, for lack of a better word, I call it the Sentimeter, the SENTI, Sentimeter. And it gives you, there are 5 faces, and then you can punch one of them neutral, highly excited, or not so excited, not my great day, whatever. What it also does, in an instant, you'll get a slice of where your organizational sentient measures are. And you also get to understand, are Mondays the great days? We came to understand, Shivani, that Tuesdays are the most productive days in the week. Very simple things. But these are the ways that organizations start to get things to be a lot more simpler. So technology, absolutely important. More than technology, the data that we keep collecting, what do we do with that data? And how can we bring that, make meaningful insights, beyond insights, any actionable insights based on what we have learned, and then take that back? Because people would like to see that change. So the whole thing, instead of just being staccato, which means there is an experience, it's been a good experience at the joining, but somewhere it kind of waves in the middle, and then towards the end, it kind of drops off. Even conversations that you have with your colleagues, or perhaps your reporting manager, can that be a process using technology? Can that make it more relevant? We have done away, for example, with this bell curve and all that. There are no rating systems. And yet, Shivani, I would like to know where I stand vis-a-vis my colleagues. I want to know. So it's very simple. There is still a way in which you get the feedback. You will get to know where you are plotted on a 2x2. And you will get to know where is the general cohort, and are you above that range, or are you below that range? It gives you feedback. And this feedback can be had as often as you wish. And of course, we encourage our managers to do this every month, but let's say once a quarter is absolutely important. So any process, even the process of learning, can this be a process which is engaging? We no longer start to push people and say, you got to do 40 hours of learning. We just say, for this particular job, we require these skills. We expect you to have these kinds of basics. Now that propels people to go and learn. So these are some of the processes. Many of these, over a period of time, we've got to ask ourselves, is this sustainable? Is this something that we'll be able to do? And are we doing the right kind of things? We also ask ourselves small things like, do I have to copy somebody on the mail? Ask yourself, because every time you do that, that's a carbon footprint.
True.
And blind copy, forget it, don't do that. So small things, but curiously, many of these things have come into the system, not because there are some three wise people sitting in a room and pontificating and coming out, but our younger professionals who join us, they are the wise leaders. They come out and they make these suggestions and they say, and people who are prone to travel quite a lot, hey, can you step on the brakes a little bit? So all along, even questions like, can I work from home? Should I come to the office? These are all practices at one end sustainable, and there's a question around that. What is prudent for an organization? What is good? And how do we use technology that keeps employees engaged? If Gallup says 76% of employees are disengaged at any point in time, how can I flip the switch and still have an engaged workforce, which is really wanting to rear and do well? Back to you.
Thank you, for so generously sharing these practices. I think the big takeaway for me is just how it's a paradox, but also it's so well that how there's technology being leveraged almost to make organizations more human, right? Like when you have something like a centimeter, or when you're just focusing on which are the days employees are feeling better on, or when they would just the sentiment of copying somebody unnecessarily on emails, like, and it's technology which is allowing organizations to become thoughtful about these little things which can sometimes seem little, but they can just add on to create either a great experience or a really bad one. So I think that's great learning, that how tech is enabling organizations to just be more human and to be more human centered. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ranjan, I want to come now to you with the other theme, right? Beyond boundaries. And as I understand, this sub theme focuses on how diversity, equity, inclusion is a very important ingredient for organizations to think sustainably, or to think of sustainability. So what I'll request is if you can unpack this for us, right? Like the building blocks for why DEI is a building block for sustainability, why it enables or propels organizations to be sustainable. And also if you can come in with your own experience at Berger Paints about what are some of the measures Berger Paints has taken and your teams have taken to foster DEI within your organization also.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, DEI is unquestionably one of the most critical elements of building a sustainable organization and a sustainable future. For two reasons. Not that it's a good to have and a good to do action or an initiative, but it's more a business requirement and part and parcel of the very genome of the organization. Now, if you look at Berger, and if you look at my direct sales, express painting sales, which I usually call it, this team goes and interacts with the retail consumer who's consuming our paint indoor, the decorative business. They go and meet the consumer and they tell them how can you paint your house and how quickly can you do it, how safely can you do it, and how well can you do it, and how beautifully can you do it. You will find that a major part of the decision making of the choice of color, the choice of texture, the way things need to be done, the seamlessness which is required, the safety and the silence which is required while this gets done. And painting is a cumbersome job. The women in the household, the women in the consumer household takes the majority part of the decision. So that's one part of the need that comes in, the call for action that comes in. Therefore, sensitizing my executives who go to those consumers is how would you need to deal with the women folk in the family? How do you interact with them? How do you show your products to them? How best you garner their support in the decision-making process? So that's the first part. The second part is about building a talent pipeline within my organization. And we've had the succession planning exercise going on religiously, and a very rigorous one which is followed. And we find that there are a lot of gaps in filling up critical roles. And when we go to campuses, we find that women talent is scarce, but we need to tap the right sources and get them in. So one is filling the talent pipeline. Second is sensitizing and enabling the organization to welcome diverse talent, be it be it women talent, be it those who are differently abled. What's the sensitization levels in the organization? And therefore, we've been running a series of culture sensitivity and sensitization sessions across the organization. And this begins from the board. So the board is very concerned and always questions and drives this agenda of building a diverse and equitable and inclusive workplace culture. And that should reflect in the number of women in the organization, in the leadership positions. Top deck -1, -2. Are we looking at differently abled people in parts of the organization? And you'll be surprised to know that most of our manufacturing units, and we have 11 of them in this country, large sections are managed fully by women, right from the top person in that section to the last level person. They're all women, and they're doing a fabulous job. Customer complaints are the lowest for products which come out through that section. And that's a realization that the board and the organization as a whole carries, and they carry it with a lot of fondness. What we are now planning is that to set up a manufacturing plant which is fully managed by women, and there are some sections where we can have differently abled people. We have our telecaller section, so then we have differently abled people there, and that's a discussion and a question that has come up, and the organization is geared up saying, yes, let's look at it. Because you know what, you really, and I know you needn't belabor this point, but you really get to see a lot of good talent come in and stable talent come. So your attrition levels significantly drop and your productivity significantly rises. And that's how it is. And in the manufacturing locations where we have women managing the entire shift and the entire section, we've not had a single attrition.
That's amazing.
So I think that's really that proves the point that we are in the right direction, and we are taking steps gradually but very thoughtfully. We're not treating this as a kind of a napalm bombing and get it done at any cost. But we are saying we're being selective and focused and getting the right results. I think the organization is appreciating it right through. So there's a huge amount of appreciation on this issue. There's a lot of concern and a lot of focus on this.
Kudos to Berger Paints, honestly, for taking such bold strides and, like driving it top down. Really, like, as they say, putting your money where your mouth is, by building it in all processes, customer facing, manufacturing, and really building it within sort of the fabric of the organization. I think that clearly shows that it's just gone beyond, lip service, as some organizations might be in that journey, and really it's embedded across.
And if I may add, when we were doing this for manufacturing, there was brouhaha saying, is it safe? Is it the right thing to do? And so on and so forth. But I think we brought in the families of the would-be employees in and said, come take a look at our manufacturing locations, come meet us, come see what we're doing. And I think this is the place to be in. And there is 100% retention. I'm happy to say this. It's taken away a lot of my problems off my table. It's 100% retention in each of these manufacturing locations where we have all women.
It's truly commendable. I think we may reach out for time separately on this case study. I think it's so creative to involve families and give everybody a view that, look, it's a safe environment, because all said and done, we still live in a context which is not safe for women, just societally. So these are some very creative approaches to learn from. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have one final question, and then I'll open up for questions that we're also receiving from the participants. Building sustainability or guiding, working within organizations to think of sustainability is a multi-pronged approach. And all of us as professionals could be at different points in our journey to have the skills to be able to, work sustainably in our respective functions or with our leaders, and to sort of propel sustainability in the areas that we are in. So my question is that what would be some of your advice or guidance to HR professionals here today and those watching later on what are some of the areas that they can focus on and prioritize so as to support sustainability in their organizations? That's one. And secondly, to do that, what are some of the skills and behaviors that they can focus on building in themselves so that they're better equipped to support their organizations in making this journey? Nathan, maybe I'll come first to you and then Ranjan to you for this question.
Thank you. I quite like this question because it's really putting the ownership on each one of us, people who are on the call, people who are in positions where they could lead and perhaps make those crucial changes. For me, if you're looking at sustainable HR practices, let's just take a simple thing like value, being, let's say, fair to people. That is equitable. Being fair to people is equitable and it is sustainable. Because the moment there is inequity in a system, then that is not sustainable. So the moment we start to think is what can be sustained, and therefore what should be our operating principles, from there, if you're able to pick out those threads, I think we'll live in a good, sustainable world. For example, you look at employment. Every time you start to employ the people, let's say in technology moves on. So training is sustainable because it invests in the people who are with you. But rate of change that happens, can you have that training and all these things in tune with that? So what is sustainable? Maybe get a few people from outside, but make sure that you continue the training from within. That is sustainable. Maternity benefits. At one point in time, people felt it was not sustainable. Today, it's the only ways, the only means of bringing women back into the workforce. Why is it important? And I think Ranjan spoke about this because this is a sustainable measure. Because what is sustained in the long run is talent, and it's agnostic to gender. Attrition. What is the sustainable level? What is it that we ought to be doing to maintain a certain level below which it becomes unsustainable? Developing leaders, sustainable. Creating a brand, that is sustainable. So if you look at anything that we do, for example, transportation, is that sustainable? I had a conversation with a very young professional the other day, and I complimented her on her choice of a certain purse that she was carrying, and not one of the very fancy ones, but it was very elegant. And then I asked her about it, and she says, Mr. Nathan, I don't know if you know this, that fashion industry contributes to 10% of unsustainable things that happen in the world. I didn't know that. And she says, so I have to be careful as to what I buy. Leather is not sustainable. So even the strap that is there in this bag is not leather, but it is made of a sustainable material. And that was music to me, and I really compliment. So any way in which you're able to first understand sustainability from the eyes of people who work with you, bring in those practices into the organization, then tomorrow for all you know, this could be another sustainable. I mean, you look at this whole thing around um, people who take away old clothes and they donate it. That's a sustainable thing. But there are organizations today that start to accumulate all this and then reuse it. Stockholm, for example, I mean, Sweden is very well known, where they have stores where you can go and buy used clothes because they want the earth to be sustainable. Practices within an organization, if we can start to look at even the simplest of measures, we all go in with a certain a lanyard, and then there is a plastic at the end of this. Now, one of the things that I noticed a firm had done was when you're leaving the organization, make sure that that plastic is returned, not because it's a way that we are taking this away from you, but because the next person who comes in, they can use it. Of course, the lanyard can change, but that plastic portion, can that be? And we thought it was a great idea until there was a youngster who came up and said, can you just not have a simple QR code and make it a lot more easier? And can you not have cameras which will know that you are a legit employee walking in? So any ways in which we can listen to our employees and look at it. And by the way, is this a sustainable practice? It may work, for example, in a small organizations, perhaps much better than a larger organization. But the key to sustainability in anything that we do starts with a simple thought. Can I do this 10 years from now? And how will this be viewed, just not by me, but but by all the people who are around me? So with that, back to you, Shivani.
Sure, Ranjan, to your views, and then we'll open up to the audience.
Sure, Shivani. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. See, I would like to put it as 4 pillars. The first pillar is building your own capability. HR professionals' understanding on sustainability, on TI, on sort of merging that with every aspect of the people function. See, so that's first thing is capability. Are you yourself capable? 1, 2. As an HR professional, are you a role model? Does the organization see you walking the talk and see you being brave enough to be different and say, listen, this is not done and this is done? So these are the small examples. What do you say, not just in a conference or in a presentation or in a meeting, but how do you deal with a lot of these issues and discussions at the coffee corner, at the canteen, near the wash basin? What are the jokes going around in the organization? That's the sensitivity. That's the first part of bringing in seriousness on this issue. So building capability, being a role model. The third is preparing the soil. How are you preparing the organization and each part of the organization? What is the level of education and communication that you are doing repeatedly across the organization? Are people attentive? Very simple things. There's a program or a module on POSH. A simple example. Are people just going through it, rushing through it, or are they paying attention? So how do you craft that module in a way that it is interesting and meaningful to the recipient of that communication? And I think that is the key. So HR professionals have to understand the pulse of the organization, understand the context in which they are working, understand the the power dynamics within the organization and tap the right power dynamics and ensure that building capability, being a role model, communicating effectively, preparing the soil. If you don't take time preparing the soil, the initiative or this leverage will slip away. You must, and repeatedly so. Once you've prepared the soil, then you must be very clear saying when you're getting in a newcomer or a new entrant, and when you have a hiring interview or a discussion, during the conversation, do you ask the candidate questions on diversity, on inclusion, on sustainability, on safety, on governance? Do you ask that question? If you ask the candidate that question, even if he's not really there, he will get there before he joins you. He will come with a pre-notion that this organization is extremely conscious about these issues. And if I am to succeed here, then I have to be well prepared. Is it a part of your competency framework? Is it a key to success in the organization? If it isn't, it won't succeed. If it is, then it is going to be a great success. Over to you.
I think very practical lessons, right? Like you said, walking the talk, being mindful, building skills. As Nathan also said, demonstrating it in your life, in your behavior, and then also finding opportunities within the organization where you can support. Thank you so much for sharing that really practical guidance. We'll now open up for questions from the audience. What I'll request is participants who have questions, you can just raise your hand and I'll call out your name and then you can unmute yourself and ask the panelists the question. You can say which panelist is your question directed to, and then accordingly, we'll take those up as well. Oh, okay, great. I think Naresh, you can unmute yourself and you can take the first question.
Thank you, Shivani, for giving me the opportunity. So, so nowadays, in the last 1 year, we are seeing a lot of changes in the technology part, that is ChatGPT and generative AI. So now, this is the year for the HR managers to start learning and implementing the Gen AI in their daily transactions or daily operations. So this point we need to discuss upon. Thank you.
So, Naresh, would you want a particular panelist to take this up?
So Nathan sir and Ranjan sir.
Oops. So Nathan, you go
What's on the
first.
So my dear friend, I think it's important to understand this in its entirety. These are tools. Tools will have to be used. And if we did not understand enough about this, there are two things that happen in organizations. Many points in time, there are two sets of people who will keep looking at you as an HR professional. One, all your leaders, because they are looking at you because you are that face to the employees at one end and also with that of the management. Employees are starting to look at you. So are you geared up? I mean, are you knowledgeable enough about all that transformation that is happening? So whether this is AI, whether this is Gen AI, anything to do with technology, do you know enough about it? I'm not saying that you got to know the last level of detail, but can you hold a good conversation? And can you use these tools? I always have my favorite example. I mean, I have no idea how this works. My mobile, I have no idea how it works, but I know how to use it, and I know how to use it well. So if I know what AI is capable of, what Gen AI is capable of, then I think I'm in the right corner. So with this, over to you, Ranjan.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. And I think again here the question is, do you know how to use it? Are you conversant? Can you teach others how to go about it? That's one. The second is it easy to use? Is it making sense to you? Is it making your work faster and better and easier? Number two. Number three, is it helping me take faster and better business decisions? If these three boxes are ticked, I think AI, generative AI, and all of that really works well. You know, I have a situation where I use ChatGPT 4 to prepare questions for the panels. So you've got to go that far, get a proper job description, and then ask for the right prompt, and then say, I want to generate questions for a finance person on the panel and an HR person on the panel and a business person on the panel. Give me those questions, and it prompts you. But then you'll have to know how to do it and how to use it. Is it making my life easier? Yes, it is. Is it helping me take a faster decision? Yes, it is. Then it will tick the box, and then people will adopt. It'll make sense.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thanks both Sir Nathan sir and Ranjan sir for the insights. We must know how to get leverage this technology for our making our life easier to doing most of transactions. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I think Moushumi put up her hand first.
We'll Moushumi, we'll take your question and then we'll come over to the questions we've received on Mentimeter also. So over to you, Moushumi.
Great. So thank you very much. It was very insightful, Mr. Ranjan, Mr. Nathan. And the question is about sustainability. So whenever we look at the employer life cycle and something that has been shared right now, right from recruiting to onboarding to training and development. So HR has a very important role to play, in terms of the business practices. So, but when awareness is one, training is one part, I think at times, you also need to have those nudges, that sustainability metrics that could be a part of PMS. So if I ask you, like, what are some of those sustainability metrics that should be a part of every employee's, PMS, so that when we look at sustainability, it gets realized? So my question is open to both of the gentlemen.
I'll keep it very short. I will not put this on PMS.
Okay.
I will not put this on PMS. I think it's more to do with the way that you live and breathe and the way that you behave. The moment you start to measure it, then I think you're missing the wood for the trees. That's my personal take.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. I don't think it will work well. Suppose you do put it on a PMS, ultimately, will it impact the ratings? That decision will be taken by the moderation committee who sits in. And if they are not committed, then the decision will not swing in that way. So I think what Nathan said is very right. Do we really feel and believe what we are saying and what we are talking about? That's more important. So build the culture, communicate well, prepare the soil, and then see the results.
So how do you make people much more serious in terms of reducing the carbon emissions or maybe the waste reduction, recycling? So any more thoughts on this?
So one of the things that we do is we publish very regularly information about people who are traveling. For instance, a very, very simple thing. This is the carbon emission on your account. Because very, very easily in a month, we know how many people travel, what means of travel they've had. If you put that down as how many tons of carbon dioxide that they've released on your account, people start to become aware. And then they'll start to cut down. So information is power.
I'd add as well. Thank you, Nathan. Wonderful. I've worked in organizations where before every meeting or every gathering, you have to talk about a safety moment.
Yeah.
So before every meeting or every gathering, you've got to talk about a sustainability moment. And when you build that as a culture in the organization, that kind of, when you're forced to talk. So I've seen boards where they say, the CEO says, wait, hang on. I don't want a presentation on profitability and EBITDA first. I want to know what's happening on sustainability, what's happening on safety. Tell me that first, one slide, and then we'll move on to profitability. That sets the tone. That makes the difference.
Ranjan, you just spoke something in me right now. So I worked in an organization which was an explosives firm, manufacturing world-grade explosives. The first thing it always starts was always safety. I still remember in my first day when I was there was a colleague of mine who was ducked on his rating because he fell from a ladder in his house, and that affected his rating because he said, you cannot be more safe off work than you are at work. So safety is something which is important. So there are ways and means of doing it. Pointing it back to what Ranjan said, behavior is important. So build that into your culture.
Thank you very much, sir.
Just taking from what Nathan said, I'll give you an example. There's been an organization where an employee died due to a road accident, and that was because he was on the rear seat of his car without a seatbelt and he crashed. The team took the body back home, right? And his wife stepped out, and it was a horrific situation. You know what? The wife asked the team, said, when you knew he was doing this before, why didn't you sack him? At least he would have been alive today. So the consequence of not following safety, the consequence of not being open to and not being strongly committed to sustainability is an action you need to take on the ground. That sets the tone.
Really thoughts to
Thank you
ponder
very
upon.
much.
Thank you so much for your question. We'll now ask the most anticipated winning question that we received on Mentimeter. So just to give the panelists and the participants a view, we had over 20 questions that came in apart from those participants who are raising their hands. And this is the one we've selected to ask you, and just calling out the person who's asked this question. You are going to win a free pass to the National NHRDN conference happening in Kolkata on the 5th and the 6th. So hope you have a good time at the conference and at Kolkata. Now, the question is, how can new age technologies contribute to building sustainable organizations? And I think as importantly, first, are technology and sustainability mutually exclusive? Should we look at them as very different? Or can we look at technologies contributing and supporting to building sustainable organizations? What's your view on that? Maybe, Ranjan, we can go with you first, and then Nathan, over to you.
Again, it's a question of choice of, when you have a CapEx plan and you have profitability concerns and growth concerns, and there you have to make a choice between what technology you're going to buy. Does the organization build in this perspective, saying, is the technology that I am buying for my next location the right thing to do? Is it a long-term sustainable one? Is it going to bring down carbon emission? Is it going to be friendly, environment friendly? I think these are questions which should bother the organization. How much of a decision, which way it will swing is a different concern, but these should vex the minds of the decision makers. And I think that's when you would know that an organization has arrived on sustainability. Over to Nathan.
So I'll take two very recent examples of where the questions about sustainability that are being raised when you're using technology, which is really cutting edge. If you look at just AI, and for AI to work, you're looking at vast data of information available. Data is available, but then you need a supercomputer kind of a chip to make that work. To prepare that particular semiconductor chip requires God knows how much of energy in just preparing that. So every time you use your ChatGPT or you use any of your AI tools, recognize behind that is something which is of gargantuan proportion in terms of just energy being spent. That is one example. The other one is we are all talking about the electric cars and the electric buses and so on. Looks very nice, sustainable. Lithium batteries, if you have to make them, how much of energy do you really have to spend so that it appears to be carbon neutral? Now those are the bigger questions that people are asking. So first of all, it's a great question because I think you just got to weave this into each other. From an organization standpoint, what is it that I use as technology which can bring me carbon credits? Which are the ones which are debilitating, and therefore, how can I get to be better? We can even use simple things. Sometimes it's not even about technology. Sometimes it's about reuse. For example, in Deloitte University, we have devised a pad where a person, writing pad, when a person can write, they can also erase it. And when I say erase, you don't have to use an eraser. You just have to move the paper over and it's gone. So, because typically go to any conference, you'll find a whole host of paper which people leave and then they walk away, never to be used again. Sometimes I collect those papers very diligently because I think, they can make small notes. More importantly, can you pass this on to somebody who can use it well? So somewhere there's got to be a meeting ground. How will you use technology? Will you get people who use technology to be a lot more conscious about being sustainable in the long run? I think the jury is out on that, but it all starts with us. Can I be sustainable? Can I do things which are sustainable? Simple things. Even if it means carrying your personal mug to the office and making sure, and of course, don't spend too much of water trying to clean that. That's another story. Thank you. Over to you.
Oh, great. I think such a valuable lesson, right? Charity begins at home. Be the change you want to see, as Mahatma Gandhi also says. Absolutely. Ranjan, Nathan, we'll take one more question in case, if it's okay with you, we'll just take
Sure,
one more.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. So, Captain Anil Dhankar, I'll invite you to ask the question, but in the interest of time, just call out who you're asking it to, and yeah, go ahead with your question. So you're on mute.
Hi, Shivani. Thank you. I wasn't expecting, so I was almost typing a thank you message. So good to see Nathan and Ranjan. This question actually is not. So first, I found this topic so relevant to my organization, MetaSocial. And today, all these 6 points that we have put there, we are trying to find an answers to those. So for me, actually, it's not maybe Nathan, Ranjan, others. I will separately also try and connect that we are, as an organization, a startup, facing all these questions of boundaryless. So today we have employees who are virtual, employees who are part-time, employees who are just advisors, and the other ecosystem that comes together for whom we are, whom we are representing. And how do we all become one entity and deliver the purpose for which, we are trying to deliver? I think that's a challenge that we are facing because we are asymmetric working, global organization, the time zones, the titles, you name a thing. I think whatever you said, from a boundaryless to 9 to 5 to everything, this hierarchy-less. So it's a real problem that you're facing. So I don't have a one specific question, Ranjan, Nathan. I think if you both can share some thoughts, and maybe I'll have a separate conversation around it. Thank you. Thank you, Shivani, for that.
Nathan,
Ranjan,
over
go
to you.
first.
You go first, Nathan.
So in that, I was so lost in your delineation, Captain, sir, I forgot what the question is. What is your question?
No, so Nathan, what I'm saying is the aspects that you brought out in this webinar For me, that is, all of those are a challenge we as an organization are facing today. How do I align everyone to the purpose that I have, where in this ecosystem I have people who are working with me as Metasocial are all not my permanent employees, working from 9 to 5, with a particular structure. So they
I
all
understand.
are.
Okay, so let me give you my 2 cents. This is the way of the world. We are going to be having people who are gig workers. We're going to be having people who would be, let's say, full-time, perhaps even part-time. This is going to be the way of work. The only thing that we can do is if we can get everybody attuned to one practice, which is a sustainable practice, I think that is a day well spent. We all have our induction programs. Many times, the induction programs is a lot of information that is given. Instead of that, if you can talk about these are the basic principles, the values that we have in our organization, it could just be a 10-minute clip. Talk about the ways you would like people to engage with you. You have already set the tone.
Thank you.
For instance, it's very simple. If you were a cadet in the National Cadet Corps, they don't teach you all about the wise way in which NCC or the Army and the way they work. They ask you to come to the parade ground on time. It's a very simple practice. But these are the mind-altering behaviors that can be sustained. And whatever that you wish for your wonderful organizations, if you can just put those tenets out and then share it. Because as part of our induction, we don't want an overload. We just want people to understand the base principles. If sustainability is part of your base principles, then people will understand that. Over to you, Ranjan.
I think just one answer to this, to my mind, is how do you get them onboarded into the organization, and how do you make them feel while they're working with you? Do they feel one and the same and part of the organization, irrespective of what category of employment they're in? I think that would make a lot of difference. How do you make them feel? What's their sole source of identity? That's important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Captain Anil, for that question. Thank you so much, Nathan, Ranjan, for your time, generosity, and for all your thoughtful advice, guidance, sharing the best practices, and I think leaving us this Saturday thinking about perhaps becoming more sustainable as individuals first before we step out on Monday to support our organizations. And I think these are some very important thoughts to take away. I'm definitely taking those away as well. Before we conclude, thank you to all the participants for joining in. This conversation has been brought to you by NHRDN. NHRDN, established over 3 decades ago, is an autonomous, non-for-profit, professionally managed organization, which plays a very important role in this country in grooming leaders for tomorrow. All those of you interested in expanding your knowledge of HR by courses, certifications, engagements, and through interactions with HR leaders such as we have today, will find an NHRDN membership really useful, so do consider it. And we are all geared up and looking forward to the 26th National NHRDN Conference happening in Kolkata on the 5th and 6th of April. It's going to be a power-packed 2 days of mega keynotes, masterclasses, case study competitions, and expo. And of course, an opportunity to engage with the best in the industry. So don't miss out on it. You can log on to the NHRDN website. Akhilesh, my colleague, has posted the link from where you can buy the passes. And of course, there's also a QR code that you can scan to straight away be directed to where you can buy the pass itself. And do not forget, we also have a second contest still going on. Make a post out of what you've learned from this session. What are your key takeaways? Post it on LinkedIn with the hashtag Beyond Tomorrow NHRDN. Over the next 24 hours, that is till tomorrow noon. And the best post, the most creative post the person who's posted it will win a free pass to the conference. And we look forward to seeing all of you at Kolkata this year. Thank you so much. It's been a great 1 hour and a great beginning to the weekend. Thank you so much to our panelists and to the participants. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend ahead.
Thank you so much.
Shivani.
Thank you so much,
Ranjan. Thank you,
Shivani.
everybody.
You've been a terrific
Thank you.
host. And thank you, Nathan, for being there. And thank you, everybody. We really look forward to meeting all of you at the National Conference on 5th and 6th of April at Kolkata. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take care,
Shivani,
everybody.
Ranjan, and everybody on the call. Thank you very much. Good day.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Fun.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.